Hey guys, how you going? I hope you're all doing well and welcome to day 10 of the 30-day health kickstart. Today we're going to be talking all about how to eat within a calorie deficit. So last week we talked about total daily energy expenditure, or TDEE, and also how to calculate a calorie deficit and what a calorie deficit was. So today we're really going to discuss different techniques and ways in which you can eat within a calorie deficit, whether that be tracking or not tracking, and also some ways in which to make it as easy as possible. Okay, so just a quick recap for you. Total daily energy expenditure refers to the amount of calories per day that your body burns in total. From this number, we calculate our calorie deficit. Now, a calorie deficit simply means you have less calories coming in than you are expending. If this occurs consistently, over a period of time, this will lead to fat loss. How big this deficit is really is up to you. Obviously, if you go too low, you're not going to be getting enough energy in to get through the day. You're going to be probably pretty tired, not recovering well from your workouts, and it's going to be extremely hard to sustain something like that long term. So we usually recommend around a 10 to 15% calorie deficit from your TDEE, or maybe 200 to 300 calories, maybe a little bit more depending on what your TDEE is. Again, there really is no right or wrong, so it's just about finding a number and a sweet spot that's right for you. Alright, so how do we actually go about eating in a calorie deficit and just making it happen? People really love structure and they love working with data and numbers, and for these people, tracking is a fantastic option. Whereas some people need the freedom to be a little bit more adaptable, to be able to change it up and really listen to their body, therefore looking for a more intuitive approach, which doesn't include tracking. The same thing goes with people that feel like they need to cut certain things out of their diet and restrict certain areas, whereas some people like to have the freedom to not have to cut anything out and to just eat what they normally eat, but just make some other changes around that. Neither one is right nor wrong. It's really about what your preference is and what's going to fit in with your lifestyle best. As we know from the last video, consistency is the key thing we need to pay attention to when we're talking about calorie deficits. Therefore, you need to find something that's sustainable for the long term. So choosing how to do this is going to completely vary depending on the person, whether it might be looking at macros, meal timings, meal prepping, cutting certain foods out, adding certain foods in. It's going to be different for everybody. Ultimately, our goal is just to reduce the amount of energy coming in, and there are so many different ways that we can do this. It's just like money coming into and out of a bank account. There is plenty of different ways that you can put money into a bank account and income streams, and there's plenty of ways that you can spend it as well. So it's just about finding the right ones for you to maximize the results. Okay, so let's briefly touch on tracking, because it's probably something that you already know quite a lot about. When we talk about tracking, we're referring to tracking your calories that you eat through an app such as MyFitnessPal. So this can be a really good tool if you need the accountability and the awareness of what you're eating. But for some people, it can be quite time consuming and also sometimes lead to a negative mindset around food. So it really isn't for everybody. The benefits that come from tracking your calories through an app obviously means that you have a good awareness of your caloric intake on a daily basis, and it also gives you a really good understanding of portion sizes and calories in certain foods. Some of the downsides in terms of some of the common problems that we see as trainers is underreporting of calories and often inaccurate reporting as well. The key thing that we really see is that people tend to miss out on some smaller items in their diet that might not seem a lot when you're eating them, but actually contribute quite a lot into your day. So things like butters, sauces, oils, they all add up quite a lot to your daily allowance, and these things often go by the wayside when we're tracking because they're just little things that we don't really consider as much. Therefore, when we're looking at our calories, we think we're eating within a calorie deficit, but it's possible that we're actually not. This is something that we're going to go into in another video. So we're going to talk about why diets fail and some of the key things that we should look out for to make sure we can stay as consistent as possible. But I actually think tracking is quite useful, and I usually get my clients to track for around 2 weeks when they start out at least, just to get a good understanding and awareness of what they're eating, portion sizes, and just have that accountability as well. Obviously, if you're a numbers person and you have a calorie deficit goal that you're trying to hit in terms of daily calorie consumption, then tracking is a really easy way to make sure you are hitting that number as accurately as possible. All right, let's move on to some non-tracking ways. Now, personally, I have never tracked my food. I think I did it once, and that's actually when I started personal training, and it just drove me insane. I became really obsessive about what I was eating. I wasn't eating what I enjoyed, and I actually ended up putting on weight. So what I initially did was doing non-tracking methods just to make it as easy as possible. Again, that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, but for me, it was the easiest thing. So the first one I did was make simple swaps in my diet, and I have made a video on this. I will try and put it in a card up here for you. But essentially, these were things that I could just swap out for slightly lower calorie alternatives, or even just reduce completely. So these are going to be individual to everyone's diet because we all have our preferences, what we like to eat and our habits. But for me, it was things like switching from sugar and milk in my coffee to having a black coffee, to switching from sauces to things like natural salsas, and reducing some of my carbs and replacing it for vegetables. These are things that were really easy for me to switch, but actually saved me a lot of calories throughout the day, and I didn't really have to think about too much. The next one is just reducing portion sizes. Especially when you're just starting out eating in a calorie deficit and you're new to this whole thing, simply just reducing what you already eat can be a great place to start. If you're a fussy eater or you just don't really want to change your diet at all, then it could be an option just to start reducing the portions that you're currently eating. Combining this with the previous point of making simple switches is a really easy way to kickstart your calorie deficit, and you can start working from that while you track your progress to see if it's working over the long term. Like I said, this is what I did. I just found it very intuitive. It meant that I didn't have to cut any specific food groups out. I didn't really have to change too much about my day, so I could slowly but surely create those habits and start seeing progress. All right, so this is the thing. Weight loss is hard and it's not necessarily fun. So we want to try and make it as easy and enjoyable as we can possibly make it. So let's briefly touch on a few ways in which you can eat within a calorie deficit but make it as easy and sustainable as possible. Firstly, I just want to talk about macronutrients, or you might hear them termed macros. Macronutrients are nutrients that you have within your diet in large quantities, and these are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. All of these are required and important and play different roles in your body as well. That is why it is good if you can try and eat a balanced diet, so you're getting a bit of everything in there. We can also tweak and play with the macro ratios so that we're getting the most out of being in a calorie deficit and choosing foods which are going to benefit us and keep us satiated and feeling fuller for longer with lots of energy. In regards to those three macros, fats and proteins are the most satiating, so they keep you fuller for longer, although sometimes it can take a little bit longer to feel fuller when eating them. On the other hand, carbohydrates tend to make you feel quite full quite quickly, but the energy and the fullness doesn't last as long. I also just want to make a really quick side note here about hunger, because this comes up a lot. But when you're eating in a calorie deficit, it is likely that at times you will feel hungry, and that's not inherently a bad thing. Now, obviously, we don't want to be starving and have absolutely no energy, but feeling a little bit hungry every now and again is going to be expected when you're eating in a calorie deficit. And don't worry, a little bit of hunger is not going to be dangerous and it's not a bad sign. That being said, hunger is really not a nice feeling. So if you find that you are often hungry and you're really not enjoying it, and that maybe will lead you to overeating, it could be good to prioritize fats and proteins in your diet and into your meals to make sure you're getting the most satiating effect from your foods. Okay, so the next way to make it a little bit easier and more enjoyable is just not to over-restrict yourself. You do not need to cut out foods that you enjoy. You can still have chocolate and you can still have bread. In fact, it's a good thing to still incorporate these things into your diet. The reason so many diets fail is because we over-restrict and we prevent ourselves from having things that we actually really want or we crave, and then we end up just overeating them once we get sick of it. So don't forget, we're looking long-term here, we're looking for sustainability, so try not to over-restrict or cut out foods that you actually want and enjoy. Of course, we still want to consistently be eating in a calorie deficit, so we can negate this by just making a little bit of room earlier on in the day or another meal around that time, or just reducing the portion of the food itself. For example, if you usually have a chocolate bar, you could just reduce how much you had at dinner and still have the whole chocolate bar you would usually eat, or you could just have half the chocolate bar or 2/3 of it instead. Next up is specific diets, and I think this is where a lot of confusion comes in. So we've got things like intermittent fasting, paleo, keto, vegan, plant-based, the list goes on, you guys know what I mean. But in regards to fat loss, all of these diets work by putting you in a calorie deficit. If, like in intermittent fasting, you reduce the amount of time in the day where you eat, you're going to be reducing how many calories you consume overall, therefore going to be putting yourself in a calorie deficit. The same with keto. So if you reduce the amount of carbohydrates you have in your diet, you're reducing how many calories you're consuming as well. So in terms of fat loss, all of these diets work simply by putting you in a calorie deficit. Just a little side note that there are plenty of other reasons why people use these diets to help manage conditions or their health. I'm an example of this, where I've tried the autoimmune protocol, I've tried being plant-based, and also done intermittent fasting to manage my autoimmune disease. However, in the context that we're talking about, in terms of fat loss, they work by putting you in a calorie deficit. So choosing a specific diet or a way of eating might work really well for you. It does work really well for some. Some people absolutely love the way they feel on a low carb diet. I just love bread and carbs too much, so it wouldn't work for me. In terms of intermittent fasting, some people feel like they have a lot more energy if they don't eat through certain hours of the day. I tend to do a sort of intermittent fasting. I would never call it that, but I tend to not eat my breakfast until around midday, just because I'm not really hungry and it means I can have a nice big breakfast. That being said, I don't put names or rules around it. I just eat when I'm hungry, and that tends to not be until around midday. So again, there is no right or wrong, and it really relies on just trying a few different things if you think it might work for you, and just seeing how you feel and how it fits in with your lifestyle. But remember, the key thing is it's just putting you in a calorie deficit. So if it makes it easier for you to be in a calorie deficit, to be on one of these specific diets, then totally do it. If not, you don't need to do it. Okay, next we have choosing volume over calorie dense foods. So it is possible to eat calorie dense, or what we could easily term junk food, every single day and still lose weight if you're in a calorie deficit. The problem will come when you're basically hungry, because you won't actually be eating that much volume throughout the day if you're eating calorie dense foods. For example, if you were going to go and have a McDonald's meal, like a large McDonald's meal with a soda, with sauce and chips and everything, the whole shebang, that might be like 70% of your daily allowance, and around that you're not going to be really eating too much more. So instead of eating calorie dense foods, you could switch it out for foods which are less calorie dense but have more nutrients and more variety, which means you'll be fuller throughout the day and you can eat more, which is always great. Of course, you can just do a bit of both. There is no right or wrong, and that's the key thing I want to get across in this video. The principles are the principles, and how you manipulate them and change them around is going to be whatever is easiest for you to sustain and live a happy life. The final one, and it's just a really quick and easy one, is be intentional in eating your food. So when you're eating, try not to be distracted. When you're in a calorie deficit, you are bringing in less food than your body requires. You are going to be a little bit hungry, and you're going to be eating less than you previously had been. So it's better to enjoy that meal and really think about it, be intentional in your eating, and really take your time to think about what you're doing, rather than just eating it mindlessly and then looking at your plate and realizing it was all gone. When you do have foods you enjoy, turn the TV off, put your phone down, and just sit and enjoy eating them. I know it sounds a bit cliche, it sounds a bit tedious, and to be honest with you, I'm not really that great at doing it, but it really does help in feeling like you're fulfilled in eating in a calorie deficit. Okay guys, that's what I've got for you. I hope this video has helped. In the next couple of weeks, we'll still be talking about plenty of nutrition. I'm going to be doing a video all about meal ideas and different things that you can do within a calorie deficit. And also, like I mentioned, talking about why diets fail, some of the common reasons that we see as trainers, and how to negate them as well. So you set yourself up for the most success in the future. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope it's helped and it's given you a little bit of information to go forward and feel comfortable eating in a calorie deficit and understanding what is going on. Each week throughout this 30-day kickstart, I will be giving away 3 copies of my ebook. To enter, all I want you to do is simply write down below your favorite snack. That's all I want to know, what your favorite snack is and why, and you will be entered into the chance to win one of those ebooks. All of those entries will go into one giant giveaway at the end of the month, and the winner will win 2 months of free coaching as well. Every video is a new chance to enter, but all the details will be down below. All right, that's it. Go and enjoy your evening, guys. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow.